What's up, welcome back to Nowstalgia. Dave here with a review of House of the Dragon Season 2, now out in full on HBO. House of the Dragon, Game of Thrones prequel. We know it well. I thought the premiere, as I talked about when the season returned, was quite strong with the blood and cheese moment. And the question, of course, remained, would the season maintain its momentum and keep us going as we barrel towards the Dance with Dragons in this Game of Thrones prequel series? Overall, I really enjoyed House of the Dragon Season 2, and I think it made a number of great improvements on Season 1. There are some faults with this season in terms of its plotting. Overall, the season was really effective at keeping the momentum going for most of its characters and continuing to develop those characters and draw in their motivations and push us into this, civil war conflict. The Rook's Rest set piece was fantastic. Aegon was colored in and made a much more well-rounded character. Aemond fully leaned into the villainy. Cole became even more detestable. Great scenes between Rhaenyra and Alicent. There's a lot to love about this season. Of course, the big talking point has been Daemon and being at Harrenhal the entire season. This season and its hiccups and its shortcomings and its finale that didn't really feel like much of a finale and more of a setup for Season 3 more than anything else, I think that largely is weighed down by the challenges of this as an adaptation because the source material is so thin and certain characters really do not have as much going on as others. So Daemon was sidelined in the plot almost out of necessity. I did really enjoy the fact that they decided to have him have visions at Harrenhal and use those visions to bring back past actors and ultimately lead him to renewing his vow to Rhaenyra. I think that was all pretty clever. It just took way too long, unfortunately. I really liked how this season handled the dragon seeds. Of course, Hugh and Ulf, non-legitimized Targaryens, but those of Targaryen blood, being able to successfully become dragon riders, and of course Adam of Hull as well. And what that means to someone like Jace, whose very birthright, his very status as a Targaryen, due to his hair and his parentage, is often in doubt. I think they really enjoyed and did a good job of coloring in the other sides of that. There are certainly characters in Season 2 that continue to get short shrift, namely Baela and Rhaena, particularly Baela, who is really just kind of sent off to the Vale and still out there at the moment. I think those are characters that, if you know the material, have more to do in the future. So I'm not worried about that. And I think if anything, the fact that I know the story, I know where this is going, having read Fire and Blood, having read the Song of Ice and Fire World book, I know the beats. I have a hard time being super frustrated with a lack of significant plot progression in the back half of House of the Dragon Season 2 because I just know what's to come. And there's so much more to come. In fact, there's so much more action. So, when I see characters that are still kind of undeveloped, like Rhaena and Baela, or someone like Daemon, who doesn't have really much to do this season, although I did really enjoy all of his moments. Because I think him and everyone at Harrenhal was really well acted and staged. I enjoyed that for what it was. But there's less plot going on, right? I just can't help but see that as more exciting plot still yet to come. And perhaps that's coping, that's carrying water. I did think, again, I think this season still does a lot to communicate progression of a lot of character development. Perhaps if House of the Dragon Season 2 was a 10-episode season instead of an 8-episode season, we might have been able to get into that next big set piece that is now coming at the beginning of Season 3 instead. Now, this set piece, which I won't spoil, but, if you know the story, the next big thing that happened after Rook's Rest, the next big, big event in the story, if that was to take place in Season 2, I was more confident in predicting House of the Dragon as a 4-season series. Now that we know this is not happening until Season 3, I'm pretty certain this will be a 5-season show. But that's fine with me, honestly, just because being in the world is so great, as we know. And also, now that A Night of the Seven Kingdoms, the Tales of Dunk and Egg series, is filming right now, and Season 1 of that will be returning next year, we're actually back to Game of Thrones being in our lives every year for the next 5 years, between 5 seasons of House of the Dragon and 3 seasons of Night of the Seven Kingdoms, because there's three Dunk and Egg novellas that takes us through 2030. So in the grand scheme, we're going to be just fine. But I can definitely understand people that felt a bit let down by the end of season 2, but man, like I'm just so excited for season 3. We know season 3 is gonna cook. There's just so many threads to get to, right? Of course, we spent all this time in Harrenhal. We spent all this time with Daemon rallying and securing the Riverlands men, under Oscar Tully, who made his best Lyanna Mormont impression earlier in the season. Now we're going to watch them fight and fuck up the Lannisters, right? We know the Starks are marching down. We know the Triarchy has aligned with the Crown and is going to do battle with Corlys and the Valyrian fleet. We have all these dragon riders, right? Only one dragon was lost this season, just like only one was lost in season 1. There's a lot to come. It's very exciting to me. Otto Hightower, who's, briefly shown in the finale here, will come back to the fore. Aegon and Larys have left the capital in expectation of what's to come from Rhaenyra and her forces. So, like, there's so much fun shit to happen, I think. And I think it was kind of cool to have, like, the visions that Daemon continued to experience in Harrenhal, which, of course, was not a new phenomenon. We knew Harrenhal fucked with you the whole time, but to have that actually, like, kind of come full circle in Daemon's, like, final visions, almost, like, kind of seeing the future, right? Like, seeing Bloodraven, seeing the Three-Eyed Raven, seeing, obviously, the Daenerys Birth of the Dragons and whatnot, and then literally being told, like, envisioned by Helena, that he's going to die at the God's Eye, which, again, if you know, you know. So all of that to me was, like, and I honestly genuinely enjoyed, like, the opportunity for Paddy Considine as Viserys and Millie Alcock as young Rhaenyra to come back to the show, as they did in a few of those flashbacks. I know a lot of people thought that went on a little too long, and I definitely think it got long in the tooth. But I think for what it was, which in the terms of the script was that Daemon was effectively, as a character, sidelined so other characters could progress and other storylines such as the Dragon Seeds could happen, whereas Daemon didn't have anything to do in that interim. I think that placeholder, which is effectively what this was kind of clever and intriguing to me. Now, I guess the counter would be maybe you just spend less time with that and spend even more time with other characters, maybe such as a Bela, so someone who could use more time. Certainly receptive to that. I think that makes some sense. And the reason you don't do that is because Matt Smith is a featured member of the cast and gets paid for every episode, whether it's in them or not, so they probably wanted to use him. I would guess is the reason. And we didn't really, like, skip anything in terms of plotting. I think the one battle that happened between the Blackwoods and the Brackens is the only thing that's happened there that we haven't seen. And of course, not showing every single battle in the course of the story is par for the course with Game of Thrones. As we know, it's of course a budget saving and production time saving move, of course, but also reflect back on Game of Thrones. How many battles did Robb Stark have in the books that we didn't see on the show? It's just how it goes. It's just how you have to do it. But they skipped a battle that Daemon didn't even participate in. I think it was a smart decision. And again, if you're saving a lot of budget to make sure the dragons are really great, and then you have the best dragon set piece of the series and franchise thus far, like you did with Rook's Rest, the three-way fight, I mean, I have a hard time being too critical of the decisions. Episode 7, of course, where Hugh and Ulf successfully, bond with their dragons. That was effectively a 15-20 minute Jurassic Park episode of Game of Thrones. Like, I thought that was absolutely thrilling and incredibly well done. And I also think, thankfully, like, we're kind of moved beyond some of the early hiccups that this series kind of had to establish with this kind of really complicated family tree, where, we spend those 6 episodes in season 1 with the younger versions of the characters, and of course, Viserys still being alive and all that. And as a result, like, when you have the blood and cheese moment in the beginning of House of Dragon season 2, it's like, well, are we really shedding too many tears for this, young son of Helena and Aegon, who we have no relationship with? Most people didn't even know his name, right? And, like, even Helena's psyche, right, which is now irreparably damaged from that trauma. She's not a character we spent a whole lot of time with, so it, like, doesn't quite land as strongly as you'd want. I think, and even in episode 2, when you have the twin duel murder-suicide of the Eric twins, right? Great fight, like, fun set piece, but not characters we had super strong connection to. I think that like sentiment has largely been passed along now, and now, like, moving forward, when character death and, like, big character moments happen, we'll be connected to them. I think we saw that right at Rook's Rest with Eve's best, Rhaenys. Everyone was really sad to see her go because that was a great performance and a character we would have loved to have even more with, right? I think Adam of Hull immediately really kind of ingratiated himself to the audience, and I think a lot of people really rallied behind him. It's a difficult Alicent season, and again, it kind of speaks to this adaptation where you have the co-lead of the show in a certain sense, right? House of the Dragon is sold, like on the poster, it's Rhaenyra and Alicent. It's Emma Darcy and Olivia Cooke. They're like the two big stars of the show, along with Matt Smith. And yet, Alicent as a character largely gets completely sidelined from a plot perspective once Aegon is, out of commission and Aemon takes over and, takes his mother off the board effectively and sends her father away and removes him as Hand of the King. Like, that's the source material. But you have to find ways to keep Olivia Cooke on the show because she's so great. And yet the character needs things to do. And like it was a struggle, I guess you could say, and the best moments ultimately of course were between Rhaenyra and Alicent, the two moments where they sneak away to talk to each other. Just amazing scenes, but ultimately like Alicent had a lot less to do this season than she certainly did in season 1. But thankfully that'll be rectified in season 3, I have no doubt. I quite enjoyed Aemond leaning into his villainy and his lust for power. You saw that being with Rook's Rest and some really great small council scenes and showing how impulsive he is for other reasons than his brother was as king. We still didn't get introduced to Daeron Targaryen. We still didn't get introduced to Daeron Hightower yet, although we saw him flying onto Sarion with the Hightower troops at the end of this finale, so we'll get him in time. Still would love to spend more time with Freddie Fox's Gwaine Hightower as well. He's primarily with Cole this season, doesn't have a whole lot going on, but looking forward to seeing more. But yeah, let me know, what did you think of House of the Dragon Season 2? Were you disappointed at the end, but still overall positive on the full season like me? What did you think? And I just think as a conclusion, I would say this finale would have been perfectly fine if it was an episode 8 in a 10-episode season, or it was just a middle episode in an 8-episode season. I think the fact that it was the finale had extra, hype put upon it by a viewer, and I understand people's unfortunate, lack of fulfillment with how it went. But what did you think? Let me know. And for more TV reviews, subscribe. I'll see you next time.